Members, we are now going to proceed to allowing the tributes to be read for our members who will no longer be joining us here in the Senate. We will start off with Senator Court. Mr. Carpenter, please read the tribute to Senator Court.
The Colorado Senate, convened in the second regular session of the 72nd General Assembly, hereby extends heartiest congratulations and commendations to Senator Lois Court. Senator Court was elected to serve in the 67th, 68th, 69th, 70th, 71st, and 72nd General Assemblies, where she represented her fellow citizens with honor and dignity. During her tenure with the Senate, she served with distinction as President pro tempore of the Senate, as Chair of the Senate Finance Committee, as Vice Chair of the Senate State, Veterans, and Military Affairs Committee, and as a member of the Legislative Council Committee. The citizens of Colorado and the members of the Senate express gratitude for Senator Court's exemplary service to our great state and wish her well in her future endeavors. Given the 16th day of January, 2020, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado. Signed, Leroy M. Garcia, President of the Senate.
Why don't we start with Senator Court?
Mr. President, did you want me to speak?
Yes, please, go ahead. I know it's been some time since you've addressed the body, so the floor is all yours, Senator Court.
I just want to thank all of you for including me on this day. It's wonderful to see many of you. I can't see you really well, but I can see several of you, and it's wonderful to participate. It was a horrendous experience to contract Guillaume Barret and have to resign as abruptly as I did. But I know that the people of my district and you colleagues in my caucus and across the aisle are in good hands with Senator Chris Hansen. So although I am sorely disappointed to not be there with you during this session, even under the trying circumstances, I'm thrilled that you are moving forward with things that matter so much to me, like the repeal of Gallagher. Thank you all for your votes on that. Those of you who didn't vote for it, you'll hear from me later. And I appreciate all the hard work you're all doing to advance Colorado in this trying times. And I appreciate the camaraderie and the wonderful support I've gotten from all of you, especially during this last 6 months. Thank you.
Members, we will now open the floor for commentary or comments on Senator Court. Senator Quorum is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is an honor for me to be the first to come to talk about a good friend. A good friend that I met 10 years ago. Never met her till the first day of the House of Representatives. And we served on a committee together, State Affairs. And I was Vice Chair of State Affairs. And the good senator sat to my immediate left, which is where she belonged. We really struck up a trust and a friendship. And I have told everyone, and Senator Court, I'm going to let you finish the statement for us. But I've told everyone from my district and throughout the state that Senator Court and I are like an old married couple. Now, Senator, do you want to explain why we're like an old married couple?
I'd be happy to if I'd be allowed to, Mr. President.
Senator Court is recognized.
Well, we're like an old married couple because we love each other completely. There's no question about that. We fight like hell and we never have sex, just like an old married couple.
Thank you. Just like an old married couple. But truly, it has been an honor to call her my friend, and I was devastated when I heard her diagnosis because I had 3 friends that had went through that. And they didn't recover from it. And so I was devastated. And when I got back in session and she got home and I went over to see her and she met me at the door, and it was so exciting. But you know, I think there's a simple explanation of why Senator Court recovered from this as doing so well. There's lots of theories, you know, there's medical miracles and everything, but my theory was, I don't think the Lord wanted her and the devil was afraid of her. Bye.
Senator Lee is recognized, followed by Senator Hansen.
Oops. Can you hear me? Lois, I love you. You are absolutely remarkable. Lois Court is the archetype of what a legislator should be. She and I officed together for 6 years in the House. We had to get a divorce when she went to the Senate because the rules prevent senators and House members from officing together. But she initially brought me under her wing because of our shared interest in electoral reform, the inviolability of the right to vote, and the absolute sanctity of the Colorado Constitution. Over 6 years serving with her on judiciary and on finance, we became really good friends as well as political and confidence. As caucus chair and as the leader of the House Democrats, she really was a continuing zealous advocate, particularly in the areas of reform of Gallagher and Tabor. Lois Court taught me to be a person with a deep understanding of the evils of some of the challenges that Tabor has and the impact that it has on us. She is absolutely fervently committed to her constituents. She is a zealous advocate for the issues she believes in, including things like right to die and Gallagher repeal. If there were more people like Lois Court in the Senate, in politics, the world would be a better place. It's been a pleasure and an honor to serve with you, and I'm glad you have now become a zealous advocate for restorative justice.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And members, I find myself in a particular situation in that I came to join you a little earlier than I thought because of Senator Court's unfortunate diagnosis. What I am join all of you in celebrating is her amazing recovery. And I'm so glad to see her back on 7th Avenue walking her dog. She is out every morning recovering, gaining strength, and you can see it on her cheery face this morning. And I'm glad to join you in having a chance to send her off properly from her service in the Senate. I may hold the record for hearing the anti-Tabor speech more times than anyone else on the planet because we were always at the same meetings in East Denver. I first met Senator Court at a HD6 meeting when she was the representative back in 2012. And if I had a nickel for every time I got to hear the Tabor speech, it would certainly exceed our salary here in the Senate. But the great news is she has recovered. She has been a friend and mentor for me each step of the way. I thank her so much for showing me what public service looks like. what it means to serve constituents, what it means to go door by door by door in House District 6 and now in Senate District 31. That is what puts us here. That is why we are here. Those are our bosses, and she never forgets that. She has never forgotten that. She never let me forget that. And I said yesterday when we were talking about the Gallagher accompanying bill and a few remarks, I think the metaphor that works so well in these situations is that of the relay race and the baton. And she handed me the baton a little quicker than I thought, but she handed me the baton, and I'm honored to pick that up and run with it, with you, with this chamber, on behalf of each of our districts. And she ran the race, she ran it well. She served this state faithfully, and I thank her for her service.
Senator Fields, followed by Senator Janal.
Good morning, Mr. President, colleagues, and my dear friend, Senator Lois Court. I met Representative Court in 2010 when I was elected to serve in the House of Representatives. And during that time, we were paired up. We had mentors. Lois Court has been my mentor since I came into office. And it is impossible for me to count all the ways in which you have helped me navigate the political environment. From the very beginning, she taught me how important it was to be present in my community, to make sure I was raising money to make sure that I would win my race. And then she taught me the importance of making sure that my policies were mature enough to present. And to do that, that means that I had to study. I had to make sure that I had meetings with stakeholders. You taught me that. So I'm so very thankful for the woman I am now serving compared to the woman I was back in 2010. And I kind of give you all the credit for what you've done to help me to be who I am as a senator. Now, the good senator who's on the screen, who represents El Paso County, said that he loved you. But I love you more. I love you to the moon and back. I can tell you we miss you down here. One of the things I haven't been able to model after you is that your ability to just to speak what's on your heart. Sometimes there's no filter. But I've learned how to filter my words a little bit, but I want to get to the point where I'm just like you, just to speak the truth to power whenever you have a chance. I miss you, I love you, and I'm so glad you're much better and you're well. Bye.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Court, it's so good to see you. Love you. First time I met Representative Court was when I got elected to the House in 2013. I had never met Senator Court before, but I'm honored to have had you and continue to have you in my life path. The other adventure, I've had several adventures with Senator Court. One of them was in Italy. Do you remember that, Senator Court? We were both in Italy in the summer of 2013, and I was hiking the Dolomites, and Lois was somewhere in that area. We didn't know exactly where each other were, but Lois gave me some GPS points, and I wondered where the heck I was going, and ended up in a beautiful little town somewhere near the Dolomites in northern Italy. And we had a great lunch together, and have some really awesome pictures to share with you of that, finally, I guess. But that was my first encounter with the adventures in Italy with Senator Court, and it turned out to be awesome. Senator Court, I want to thank you for your guidance and your help in regard to the end-of-life options. And I know we went through that twice, and it was very difficult, and we had a lot of pushback. But when the people spoke about what they wanted and their choice, we won. They won. So thank you for having me be a part of the end-of-life options. To this day, I have people that thank me, and I'm sure you do too, for that very important piece of legislation and a ballot initiative, which eventually became legislation. But I miss you, and you look wonderful, and I hope that in the near future I get to come visit you soon. But I love you too. And I want to thank you for everything that you have done, not just for helping me through this path at the Capitol, but also for the many people that you have helped with your legislation. See you soon. Thank you.
Senator Priola, followed by Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I'm not wearing my mask because just so former Senator Court can hear me clearly. I really miss Senator Court. We both came in as freshmen the same year along with Senator Williams, and I still have the freshman photo in my office at home, and we both look so much younger in that photo back then. We had some very spirited debates, which I treasure in House Finance through the years, of the pro cons of Tabor, and they went on, and they were a lot of fun. But I will have to say my favorite photo, one of my favorite photos in life, and you can still find it online. I think Getty Images was there the day that we did the same eulogy when we were leaving the House. There's a photo of me presenting her Tabor framed, and I think she told me she kept it behind her door in her office to show it respect. So that's a photo I'll always treasure. I also treasure her coming down in the well and telling the story of how her family got their name when her father came over, I believe, many years ago, and I don't remember the original name. Like my family, they changed their name when they came over, but I think the story goes her father thought Court, meant justice, and that was a really, really good name. So I was very sad to find out earlier this year that we wouldn't be able to spend this session together, knowing she was planning on stepping down anyways, but really enjoyed serving with her and joking around and count her as a friend, and I'm looking forward to continuing to stay in touch long after we're done legislating. And sharing a lot of those war stories from the House and the Senate. So, Senator Court, we're glad you're doing better, and you were missed very much, and look forward to still being engaged on issues, both of us, in the future. Thank you.
Senator Pedersen, followed by Senator Todd.
Oh.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Lolo, it's great to be able to honor you today. I'm really glad that we have the chance with you not being here. So I met Lois during advocacy long ago, but got to really know her when I was first running for office in 2012. I can't believe that was 8 years ago already. But running for the first time, I was absolutely terrified. And I remember sitting down with Lois Court to do call time, and she said, at every call that I did, she would say, "No, Brittany, you do X, Y, and Z. You send the letter, you ask this, period." And she helped train me on how to campaign, how to be relentless. When we were finally made it past the election, as you know, we always called her Caucus Mama, even before she was actually the caucus chair because she always kept us in line. She called us her kids. She would tell us to be quiet when we were being loud. I know some people, for me, that reminded me of my grandma. My grandma was a really strong woman, and Lois Court was one of those strong women who really impacted my life. She helped mentor me as a young legislator throughout my time in the House. She always believed in me, pushed me to do better. We've been through a lot of battles, a lot of yelling, a lot of celebrations, and she will always tell you exactly where you stand with her and why she's upset or why she supports it. There's never any question about where Lois stands. But I really just want to thank you for being a mentor for me in this challenging job, for always believing in me. And some of the fond memories that I have, especially in the House, as you know, we do Hummers. And Senator Quorum played Lois Court. And you might especially remember the Nerf balls that he had, I believe, is what you used? The Nerf footballs. And we always, the whole thing was about the legacy of Lois Court, about how if you went to Finance Committee with a tax credit, you better expect to have a sunset. She was a fiscal hawk, made sure that we were always looking out for our budget in Colorado. And you will be known for many things. Your legacy, the legacy of Lois Court, we're going to miss you. But we know that you will be texting us, telling us exactly what we're doing wrong, what we need to do better, and I know you'll continue to be there. We love you, Lois.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, my friend. We were just sitting on your front stoop, was that Friday, I think it was, and watching Shiloh play ball with herself while we continued to go on and on with conversations. And I think one of the things that I want to say to you today, Lois, is that I think the funniest thing probably is that people continued to mix you and I up just because of hair color. And that I still will find people in the halls that will say to me, "Oh, you're back." And I said, "Where was I?" And they said, "Oh, no, you're not Lois Court." And I said, "You're right, I'm not Lois Court, and I didn't leave yet." But one of the things that I want to really share with you today is the number of people who have come to me, whether it's at the Capitol or walking along back to the car or wherever, that say, "How's Lois doing? What do you know? How's she doing? We really miss her." And that is not just from legislators and lobbyists, but it is also from many of the staff members in the Capitol, the sergeants, the custodial staff. I know Marilyn Edens absolutely loved you to pieces in the House. We served together in the House and then was pleased when you joined me here in the Senate. But the real person that you are is a person that does not look at people's labels, does not look at who someone is for criteria to categorize how they get your time and get your attention. You have the gift of charity, you have the gift of love and acceptance, and it has been a real blessing for me to get to serve with you. I wish you and Pat well and your family. God bless you, and it has been wonderful to get to serve with you in both chambers. Thanks, Lois.
Senator Crowder, followed by the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Lois, you look good. I'm going to relay a couple memories that I have of what has happened. I had a bill up in a committee that she was on one time, and I forget what brought the circumstances up, but somebody was testifying, and they made a comment about old gray hairs. I don't know if you remember that or not. Needless to say, my bill was killed. I told Lois afterwards, I said, "It's not that you have gray hair, Lois, it's you are mature. I wouldn't consider ever thinking that Lois Court was old, because she's not. You know, she's been a bright spot in this chamber for a lot of years. And, you know, the other thing I'd like to talk to you about is we talk about lobbyists once in a while, but you've never been lobbied until Lois Court comes to you and lobbies you. You know, very forceful, and I just, you know, I've really, I've had a lot of respect for you over the years, and I like the way that you treat people, very blunt, and you hope you do well where you're at. You know, it's just not the same here without you, but I, you know, hope for your speedy recovery completely, and just for you to know that you are missed here, and you will always be a bright spot in my memory of this place. Thank you.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the first day of this session, I offered the words to Senator Court, thank you for your sense of humor, your tenacity, your extensive institutional memory. My family and I will continue to pray for your healing and full recovery. God bless you, friend. I had the opportunity to serve with Representative and then Senator Court, both in the House and the Senate. A couple of things that I remember and have stuck with me in my time in the two chambers. My first 2 years were in the majority, and then my second 2 years in the House were in the minority. And a ruling of the chair or something happened one day in the House chamber, and I was not happy with that. And Representative Court looked me in the eye and said, "You guys did that to us too." And I remembered that. When I came to the Senate, I was blessed to be in the majority, and then my third and fourth year to be the Senate Majority Leader. And one of the things that I constantly reminded myself of were those words from Senator Court. Certainly not perfect, but in any challenging situation, to try to think of a way through that situation that Lois might not come back and say, well, you guys did it to us too. One of the things that I have learned and appreciated about Senator Court is that, especially in positions of leadership, she isn't afraid to have a conversation with someone on the other side of the aisle or in the other chamber. This is something that we lose because of term limits in our legislature. When a man, a statesman or stateswoman in this General Assembly learns to have that kind of confidence and the positive outcome that can be achieved by having a conversation with someone on the other side of the aisle and even in the other chamber, when you learn that, very quickly it's time to leave. And we lose that. If there's one thing that I could convey to you as a leader in this chamber that I've learned from Senator Lois Court, it is don't be afraid to go have a conversation with someone with whom you might disagree in the well. You might vote differently, but give yourself the opportunity to talk to each other and listen to each other, just in a room by yourself, not with cameras or microphones, but just the two of you. Give yourself the opportunity to speak frankly and to hold those conversations in a confidential way. Allow the other person to leave that conversation and do or say what he or she has to do and expect the same in return. But if you can have a goal in mind, my experience in this building is there's hardly anything more effective than having a one-on-one conversation with someone with whom you might disagree. Senator Court, thank you for being a mentor and a teacher in that regard. God bless you and your full recovery.
Senator Marble.
Mr. President. Hello, Lois. My state affairs buddy. We really do miss you down here. Your energy is unmatched. You really have a glowing aura about you, and I have to say, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. And Strawman, I think I'm going to miss you most. You weren't here for the session, and I sure wish you were. Just like Lucia, just like Sherry, just like Nancy. It's something about women our age. We are pretty blunt. And we do have an understanding that life is bigger than anything. And if you don't get out what you need to say, you're never going to be heard. And boy, you never had a problem with that. And neither did Lucia. And Sherry had a way that was a little bit different. Everybody, all the oldies, but you guys are goodies. You're gone, but you're never forgotten. You're part of what I'm going to carry for the rest of my life, away from here. Your personality and Sherry's and Lucia, you really made a difference in the air of the Capitol. We're never going to see that again, because your directness and ability to have the conversations about anything, it seems that opportunity for openness is gone. And it's left with you. I remember so well when we were having the discussions about who can hug or touch who here. And you, like me, was, well, I'm going to hug whoever I want to hug, because you're just like that. Nobody took offense to a hug from Lois ever. But we're walled off and categorized now, and you're gone, and Lucia's gone, and Sherry's gone. Nancy's to follow, and it's like a generation that we so need to keep here is never going to return. And Lois, you are an incredible human being, filled with energy and life, conversation, love, bluntness, which I adore. And I just want to say, knowing you has made me definitely a better person. And I would rather be with you, fighting in fights that mean a lot, in having those direct, blunt conversations, and remember that for the rest of my life. And like I said, this has been a real transformation for me. But I cannot say honestly that I do not think of you without thinking of Lucia and Sherry too. I don't know, there's something about it. You guys are incredible. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your blunt directness and for not categorizing and letting people speak. It is what is the most important thing about this building, and I'm afraid that we're losing it. Thank you so much. We love you, Lois.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to see Lois rather than look at whatever camera's on. Yeah, I'm really bummed out that you've not been here. And, you know, if Senator Quorum was your cantankerous Capitol spouse, I appreciate you welcoming me as your prodigal Gentile son. So thank you for that. And obviously, you know, we had a lot of interesting conversations, meaningful conversations about theories of government, powers of the different branches of government, the role of the Constitution, and I'll always be very grateful to have those kinds of conversations because sometimes you don't have those kinds of conversations down here. And I'll remember those, and I always remember just kind of like the little funny things where we'd be in a committee and I would give you some inconvenient truth and you give me a special sign on your nose, or was it just a scratch on the nose? That's what it was. To let me know, like a good mom, where you were kind of zapping me with kind of a cattle prod there. So thank you for all that. And I just want to say finally, thank you for a lot of the emotional support you gave me when you were here. And I look forward to seeing you very soon after we're done here. Thank you, Lois.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thank you, Lois, for everything you have been in this institution and everything that you are. I remember the first time I really had we sat on State Affairs together, and there's probably not a better kind of crash course in this place than immediately as a freshman going into State Affairs and just kind of sitting back and watching what happens. And I remember a few of you there, and it was State Affairs is a tough committee. It's sometimes draining and super emotional, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. But you also made it a lot of fun, and I'm incredibly grateful for that experience being my kind of orientation into the legislative process, is sitting on that committee next to you every day. Thank you for all of the snacks that you would bring to the State Affairs Committee. You would always share a random Triscuit when I forgot to bring food and we were there at 11 p.m. still. I love how when I came to this place, and you know, this is a formal institution. It's big and it's solid. It's made out of rock, and there's so many rules that aren't even necessarily written down, but you just always have to follow and learn about them, and it's so easy to make mistakes. And then I remember getting probably on my first day on State Affairs, sitting with you and realizing, maybe actually you don't have to follow all those rules. Because Lois knows when to follow rules and when it's okay to let those rules slide a little bit for the sake of humanity and relationship, and finding something a little bit deeper about this work that we do than just the rules that govern us. And I remember thinking, man, this is a stiff place, but Lois Court is probably the most inappropriate person I've ever met in my life. And it made me feel a little bit more comfortable and let my guard down immediately. And then, of course, I met Don Corum, and I was like, Don's much more inappropriate than Lois, but they're two peas in a pod. But thank you for that. Thank you for that informal lesson that I think you've given so many of us to take the work seriously, but not take ourselves too seriously. And I think it's a really important lesson, especially when the stress is high and the pressure is on. And I don't think anybody has exemplified that more than you, Lois. I love how old school you are. While, you know, I mean, you are the old school politician. You are someone who truly understands and values and mastered working with constituents and going door to door and what it means to grassroots fundraise. And I think you have been that person that understands the bedrock principles of the work that we do, but at the same time adds a little Lois Court twist to it and makes it new and fresh. Thank you, and I love that you're such a purist in some ways. Sometimes I hated it, but in general, I love that you're such a purist. But at the same time, I think the thing that I've learned the most from you is how you keep in mind some perspective, and you've taught all of us, I think, that lesson. And I think probably in these last few months, you've taught that to me more than I've learned it from you over the last several years. And I remember when I found out that you were diagnosed, and I was actually in the hospital because of the birth of my daughter. And it was it was the most amazing and scary moment of my life. And I remember getting a phone call, I think from the president, and saying, "Have you heard about Lois?" And it was a very surreal moment for me, because I went downstairs to leave the maternity ward, and I was kind of just in the downstairs area where there is kind of the emergency intake. And it was just such an odd juxtaposition of being upstairs with my brand new daughter, nothing but joy and terror, and then going downstairs to take this phone call from the president and hearing that Lois was in the hospital and the prognosis was not good. And it was a very strange moment to sort of literally be in between these two floors of absolute joy and a new life, and then getting this news downstairs in the hospital about Lois. And I immediately texted you, Lois, and I didn't think you were going to get this text message, or I didn't know if you were awake or what the condition really was at that point. And I just remember you writing back and saying, "Thanks for checking in on me, but how's that damn daughter of yours? And that's what's important right now." And immediately you were texting me, and you were telling people that the prognosis was bad and that you weren't sure if you were going to recover. But in the same breath, you asked about my new baby girl. And when I eventually talked to you on the phone that day or the next day, even though you were Lois Court, you were the person that is sitting back there and was always committed, and like I said, was a purist in many ways and was so committed, you immediately said, "Yeah, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be back in the Senate." You had made your mind up right away, because you had this sense of perspective of what's important. And in some ways, we have committed our lives to this. We are all masochists for going into this line of work in some ways. But you are someone who reminds us that you got to keep perspective and keep in mind what is important for you. And in so many ways, I think you taught me as my other Jewish mother, the family and taking care of each other is incredibly important, and just as important, if not more important, than the work that we do every single day, paying attention to the rules, passing bills, and doing the work. And so thank you for the legacy that you've had on this institution for reminding us of that. Thank you for the legacy and the impact you have had on my life and helping me remember every time I'm here and I go home, and that juxtaposition of being in the belly of the beast sometimes when things are stressful here, but then I go home and I see the joy of my daughter, and remembering the lesson that you taught me, that you got to keep things in perspective and to pay attention to what matters. And so thank you for that lesson that you've given all of us. I just have one last thing to say. Thank you, Lois. We love you so, so much, and we're so glad that you're doing better.
Madam President Pro Tem, Senator Court, when I first met you in the House, you were assigned to me to be my mentor along with Ed Vigil, And for those of you who know Ed Vigil, he was a tremendous mentor along with Lois Court. They both served as my mentors in the House. Liked and loved almost everything about you except the fact that you had to schedule things still on a paper calendar, which made it very difficult. I remember when you came over to the Senate, as Senator Lee said, that you wanted to stay over in the House in the same office, and we had to work very hard to convince you that that is not the way it could be, and that you had to join us over here in the Senate. It was such a great addition to have you here, and obviously have you as the President Pro Tem of the Senate. You will never know how much you helped me personally and our team in all that we worked through. I too remember when I had first talked to you and how difficult it was to hear that you were going through this medical challenge. And I reached out to you and said, I want to go see you right away. And you said, I don't really want visitors, but come on by. I met you several times, and I remember how much you talked about how you were pushing the doctors to do more and more and more, and that they were saying, you got to take it easy, you have to take it easy, you have to be slow in your approach.
I don't do slow.
You don't do slow. And I remember you said things like that. It was amazing to hear your spirit then and the tenacity you have. You know, to me, you've been, as so many have said, what Michelle and the boys and I would refer to as Mama Court. But you've been more than Mama Court to us. You've been a fierce advocate. You've been a lawmaker that has changed Colorado for the better. And for your dedication and love in support of not only the General Assembly, but to all Coloradans. Senator Court, we present you this tribute that says, Lois Court, representative from 2009 to 2016, and senator from 2017 to 2020. Madam President Pro Tem, thank you for all your years of service.